What is a gift that will last a lifetime? Cast iron skillet. How would somebody even get rid of one? It's not possible. You'd look like a cartoon villain no matter what you do. You can let it rust into oblivion, but even then that's hard to do. Some fucker will still find it and drop it in an electrolysis tank and restore it to new condition. I'm just imaging some guy who breaks into people's homes looking for rusty pans, restores them and put it back. Care for a game of Gwent? Found me pan, have ye? When I start talking to meself they say I've gone balmy. Sweetie, you were to find me pan, not bother me. Dis don't look me pan, get me my PAANN. Legend. I heard that with Gerald's voice. Sounds like a Witcher reference. Sounds like a Dark Crystal reference. Cue the Witcher 3 quest. I'm certain there are gnomes involved. Last night, I went into your house and broke your dishes in Walken voice. They call him the Panhandler. My mechanics had entered the chat. I know several people who trawl yard sales, estate sales and flea markets looking for rusty cast iron to do just that. I see. Then I must leave? But first let me caress this rusty kettle. His nemesis is a man who breaks into people's homes and scrubs off their seasoning. Here's your guy, maybe mine is he putting back. https://m YouTube.com watch V equals M3IORO to MA Arcasteron. I've saved rusted cast iron by just using soap and a scrubber. Then it's time to do a heavy round of seasoning. In the north of Mexico, people will take old discarded disc harrows from a tractor. The more used it is, the better it holds the layer of fat when seasoned. They remove the rust, solder some edges and handles, put it over a fire and season it and use it to cook as a massive wok. Ultimately all of these are just hunks of iron. They are very hard to kill, but they do break occasionally. You don't necessarily even have to take the rust off. You can just boil the rusty skillet for 30 to 60 minutes until the iron oxide turns black, becoming iron carbonate. Then season normally. Iron oxide is very ferrous and soaks up oil really well. Plus it's basically impossible to rust afterwards because it's literally already covered in a layer of carbonized rust. I have 3 skillets I've done this to and they're idiot-proof. Cracks Knuckles challenge accepted. That sounds awesome. Is there a video or photo of it you can share? Sure, you can have a picture and the traditional dish made on it. Love it. Add it to bucket list. There's a YouTube channel called Tinkering and he restores stuff like this all the time. It's actually kinda fascinating. Olive oil and coarse salt, you're good to go. Careful, you might get added as a mod over at Arcasteron. That would still last a lifetime though. Cheap ones crack too. Yeah. My mum managed to rust one to oblivion. It wasn't pretty. A happy memory. I've known people with dementia who still clearly remember a day at the beach or a special vacation. That's how I destroyed mine. Yeah, I know I probably could have fixed it, but I only used it a couple times and never understood the whole seasoning thing. Stainless steel works fine. Nothing like cast iron for crisping food. The only difference I ever noticed was it taking a lot longer to heat up. Rust can be fixed, at least I've seen videos of it. Give it to a thrift store. Found a cast iron dating back to the 1800s from metal detecting in my neighbor's yard. I found a little one at a campsite once and I cook with it nearly every day lol. Heat damage. Some people swear by throwing their pan into a blazing bonfire to clean it off, but this changes the crystal structure of the iron and makes it impossible to season. Cast iron is a very strong and heavy metal, however it is also very brittle. Simply dropping a cast iron skillet can cause it to shatter. Also pouring cold water on it while it is hot can also do that. throw it into your dirty laundry pile. It's probably gonna go wherever those socks go. Melt it and turn it into a cast iron burger. Mine cracked when I tried to wash it fresh off the hot stove. If they're cheap, sometimes they're really brittle. I had one that was pretty cheap and it broke while I was breaking up peppercorns for a recipe. My dad found a set of cast iron pans buried in his backyard, so he cleaned them up and boom, free pans. Donate it. The problem with mine isn't getting rid of them, it's trying to keep them. Give it to me, I'll deal with it. I would say by re-gifting it. I found one in the parking lot outside my building. Now I have two. Or like a player in PUBG. You just stick it in your forge and melt it down. I mean, garage sales are a decent way. My family has a collection, many of which came from thrift stores and garage sales. My mom had a cast iron skillet that she dropped on the floor and the handle broke off. We were both so confused as to how it happened because we thought they were basically indestructible. My neighbors just gave me a 12 inches one for free because it was completely rusted. Left it in vinegar water for 12 hours and gave it a good scrub. After a couple rounds of seasoning, it is back to new. Nothing beats free for something that will last a lifetime. It would be like Homer trying to get rid of the trampoline. It must be taken deep into Mordor and cast back into the fiery chasm from whence it came. IDK. My mom found a rusted one in somebody's garbage one time and she took it home and managed to fix it. That's more an anvil. One of ours warped so it's no longer flat. The cast iron skillet I used to make eggs on this morning was my great-grandfather's and I believe he got it sometime in 1920 or so. I'm kinda old, so do the math. Are you gonna pass it down generation to generation? My family heirloom is literally a cast iron waffle maker. Honestly though, nothing is better than a practical heirloom. With some old jewelry or a painting or whatever, it ends up in storage because no one wants to use it or wear it around. Like you have your great-great-grandmother's wedding band. Cool, you didn't know her but you know you're never going to wear the damned thing. But I'm willing to bet you can taste the history of that waffle maker. Hopefully not literally, that history might just be mold. I have an old almond grinder which belonged to my great-grandmother. I once bought a new one because I couldn't find the old one after moving, but it can't even compare. Thankfully I found it again after a while. It's called Flavor Spots. My parents didn't do that. They just bought me my own and kept theirs. Still a hell of a 20th birthday present. The material that they made the old ones with ran out, so there will never be any more of those old ones like that. They are a fantastic piece of cookware if you take good care of them. Can you elaborate on this? What was the special material? Can't we just remake the same alloys today? I can't find a source, but I know that there was a specific vein of cast iron that ran out, and it was very good for making cast iron cookware. They may be able to recreate the alloy, but to my knowledge no one has. I know someone that has more knowledge on the topic and I will try to get in touch with them. I'm pretty sure you could order virtually any iron composition you wanted from a metal supplier if you ran a foundry. Maybe you were thinking about the way vintage cast iron was manufactured. The old stuff was ground and polished at the factory. They don't do that anymore because people won't pay for it, so newly made stuff always has a rough texture. There are people who manually grind and polish their cast iron to get a vintage finish. That may be what it is. I definitely like the smoothness of vintage better and the fact that they have years of seasoning on them. I took a lodge pan, a wire wheel and smoothed out mine. More expensive ones like $100 minus $300 do the smoothing step. Seasoning can be done yourself. Though I usually prefer my black carbon steel debuy pan for most things, cast iron would get used for, and a Dutch oven for the others, so it doesn't get used much. They don't do that anymore because people won't pay for it. Some of us would be glad to. Some cast iron is ground and polished by much more expensive, and a lot of times doesn't do as well in testing. It is like $20 United States at Walmart for a Lodge 12-inch non-polished cast iron versus $180 to $215 for one the polished kind. If you want to drop that kind of money though, Field's cast iron is an option, but yeah, I don't blame people for not wanting to pay for the polishing, grinding. Polished versus not has almost no impact on cooking, it just looks better and easier to clean. At least I can't find anything online. https://www.seriouseats.com 2014 11th The Truth About Cast Iron. HTML. Not worth the 3x markup. I mean, if you can find a cheap, free old pan, go for it. I love cast iron cookware, or please do post if you find any more info. I will as soon as I find out. Thanks. He thinks cast iron is mined out of veins. A vein is where a particular mineral is in the ground. Cast iron is just iron that has been heated and poured into a mold, aka a cast. I wouldn't hold my breath on an update. They're all made of iron. Worth noting is older cast iron cookware tends to be polished out of the factory, while newer cast iron tends to be pre-seasoned out of the factory. Many people feel one way or the other is superior, and they will all die on that hill. I've never noticed a difference. Hold up. Cast iron refers to the type of iron, not the method of making. I thought casting an iron pan was a thing, and that's what a cast iron pan was. Like cold rolled. Cast iron is very high carbon content, like typically around 2 to 4%. Which means high strength. But there isn't much more to it than carbon, silicon, and iron. So, which is why it is prone to rusting over time, but is also very heavy and durable. The carbon content is not what makes iron strong. Steel generally has a higher or comparable yield strength than iron, while having an order of magnitude less carbon in a lot of cases. Unless by strength you mean that cast iron is harder, which is true. The carbon content is directly related to the hardness of the iron alloy. Most cast irons are relatively brittle though, and will typically fracture before deforming. Take this with a grain of salt though, as the alloy composition and heat treatments can vary the properties of metals quite a bit. You make steel by adding carbon to iron. What are you talking about? No. You don't. If you think pure elemental iron is just mined up from the earth, then I got a bridge to sell you. Crude iron, which is processed from iron-rich minerals, contains roughly 3.5 to 4% carbon. Research the Bessemer process. Different steel alloys are good for different things. Same as aluminum, which can be hardened as strong as steel, albeit brittle. Sometimes you want ductile behavior, such as when you want something to yield rather than crack. A car frame, for example. But yes, to mine pure iron would be impossible. Very few elements exist not in some sort of multi-element molecule. But to refine iron and alloy it to your needs is an entire different world. Steel has different cubic structures depending on how it is alloyed, giving it vastly different macro properties. Please read An Introduction to Materials Science by William D. Callister Jr. Short, but you'd agree that both cast iron and steel are both just essentially iron alloys, right? All I'm saying is that if you're given only the carbon content of 10 different irons and steels, you can't just order them from a lowest to highest and say that's also the order of their strength, which by the way is a bit of an ambiguous term to use. I'm also an MSEP. Hello fellow MSE. I mean, yeah, any non-pure metal of majority iron is an iron alloy, right? An alloying ideally yields improved properties. If you have just iron, silicon and carbon, yes, you can generally order them from highest to lowest based on carbon content when fully hardened, since carbon increases hardenability, not hardness directly. It's when you throw in the other fun elements like nickel and chromium where things get fun. Technically, yes. But the material used to make the skillet is different, not the way it is made. Okay, thanks, that all makes sense. Just when you said a vein of cast iron, it threw me. It probably had a slightly different mixture of carbon, silicon and whatever else was around in that area at the time the iron was deposited. It's pretty straightforward to alter the mixture of these, but cast iron skillets are unlikely to be an application producing such high demand that they can justify making a special batch of the material. Yes and no. Cast iron refers to the process of casting the metal into a mold or die. It also refers to iron alloys with high carbon content, usually greater than 2% by weight. However, there are different types of cast iron such as gray iron, ductile iron or malleable iron made by changing the percents of the alloying elements like C, pH or C. You're correct, cast iron refers to the method, not the material. That's what it is. Cast iron is iron that has been poured into a mold, a process called casting. It is not a thing you dig out of the ground. That's just iron.